thank you for having me. It's a great event. It's a great day in Ohio as well. Look, concealed carry is important to me. I am a concealed carry holder. I have my gun on and I always carry it with me. But I think it's important that we make sure we protect that right. When I was in Washington as a congressman, I also was very supportive of concealed carry and also reciprocity and all of those issues. I think that's important as well. Also, while we're talking about endorsements, I've been endorsed by every gun group in past elections. But let me go back and tell you a little bit about myself first. Jim Renacci was born in Western Pennsylvania, and anybody who watched the movie Deer Hunter, that's exactly where I grew up, right near the movie Deer Hunter. We hunted, we fished. It was the place where when you get out of high school, you either went to the steel mills or the coal mines, you didn't go anywhere else. What I saw, though, was Ohio, the land of opportunity. I saw Ohio as a place that you could do anything, and quite frankly, I moved here 39 years ago with my wife, actually a high school sweetheart. She'll tell you she met me in 6th grade, but we did meet in 6th grade, but we were married 39 years ago, came here, and I started my first business with just a couple $100s. That business, I went from one business to 60 businesses, created over 1,500 jobs, employed over 3,000 people. I was an entrepreneur, and I was a serial entrepreneur, and that's what I always thought I would be. I always believed in giving back, though. Gave back to my community, whether it was as a church usher, whether it was a baseball coach, whether it was even serving as mayor, because the city was actually losing $2 million, and the business community asked me to do it. They saw I was an entrepreneur, I stepped up, and I did it. But I also will tell you that I always believed you get in, you do your job, and you get out, and that's what I did when I served as mayor. One thing happened in my life, though, that changed my life. In 2009, many of you remember, General Motors, I was a General Motors dealer. One of my businesses was a dealership. I was a General Motors dealer. I was a good General Motors dealer. I was actually going to build a brand new location out on the highway. I had confirmation from General Motors. Everything was approved. And then Obama took over, the federal government took over General Motors, and lo and behold, in June of 2009, I got a letter that says you are no longer going to be in the General Motors family. Now, we talk about rights being taken away from us. How would you like your business to be taken away from you? I had $3 million invested, 59 employees. I already had a piece of land I was going to build a new location on. That was like being kicked in the stomach, seriously. And the first thing I did was figure out how I was going to save this place and how I was going to save the job. So I called my congressman. Lo and behold, I didn't know much about Congress. The congressman came and visited me. He told me he was going to help me. That was the biggest mistake I made, because what I learned very quickly is members of Congress can't be trusted either. And he told me that he would help me, and in July of 2009, he stepped up and voted against my dealership being reinstated and 1,200 dealerships in the country being reinstated. I called him up and I said, "Not only are you a liar, you can't be trusted. I'm going to remove you from that office even if I have to run." And I can tell you, there's nothing like stepping into the game. We can talk about mayorship. That's community service. That's nothing. Step into a national game where you're up against one of the 5 members of Congress who voted for Obamacare and helped Obama get Obamacare passed. And when you hear President Obama say, "I'm going to do everything I can to make sure Renacci loses," that was a fight. But it was a fight worth it for me. I can tell you that I spent 14 months, and I'm happy to tell you that I got elected and defeated that gentleman, and I became a U.S. Congressman in 2010. Now, that's why I say to people when they say, "Well, you know, I'm running for office for this," or "I'm running for..." No, I had a purpose. I was going to remove a bad guy. And it was interesting because 2 years later, I got redistricted. We're talking about redistricting. I got redistricted. And people say, "Well, the establishment, they help these people." No, I got redistricted into another fight against another incumbent, Betty Sutton. And I looked and said, "What is going on here?" But really, they don't like fighters in Washington. They don't like people who are going to step up and make a difference. And quite frankly, I had another fight in my hands, and I worked for the next 2 years, and I defeated the second incumbent. Now, I will also tell you that I have a record in the U.S. Congress. There's only one person in the history of the U.S. Congress that has ever defeated 2 incumbents 2 cycles in a row, and that's me. So I'm happy to tell you that I'm a fighter, and I'm somebody who's going to fight for you. When I got to Washington, I always tell people, I looked around and thought, wow, this is a great place. Thomas Jefferson you know, you think of all these people, and how did I get here? And then I looked around and said, how did they get here? Because that's the problem. We elect too many people who aren't fighters, who don't care, who can't balance a checkbook, who don't really support what they say they support, and I realize it's a broken place. 6 years after I was there, I decided I was going to leave and run for governor. And in 2017, you probably remember my name, I stepped in against DeWine, Husted, and Mary Taylor, and I started that fight. The problem was, and I know Josh was here, Josh stepped down, and then I got a call from the President of the United States. Quite frankly, I said, there's no way I'm running for Senate. There's no way I'm going back to Washington, D.C. unless the President of the United States called me. That was a mistake, because 2 days later, I got a call from the President of the United States. And I would tell you that I was in his office, and he said, Renacci, I need you to run. I said, Mr. President, I don't want to run for Senate. I think I can help you in Ohio. He goes, no, I need you to help me in Ohio. And long story short, I decided after a couple days to jump in the race. I will also tell you something pretty special about Trump. People will say they're Trump supporters, they're Trump supporters, they're Trump supporters, but nobody can say they stepped up and supported Trump as early as I did. On March 12th, 2016, in Cleveland, Ohio, behind the stage, I endorsed President Trump. When, if you remember, when everybody loved Kasich, and everybody was supporting Kasich, at least most people, or they were supporting others, there was only one person that stepped up, and by the way, there was only 3 of us behind the stage. I'll never forget, Mr. Trump said to me, Renacci, you are really asking for trouble, because you're taking on Governor Kasich. And I said, that's okay. I want to take on whatever's necessary to change the system. And that's what I did. So I jumped into that support. I endorsed him, and he's never really forgotten me, still has never forgotten me, and I think it's going to be an interesting race. Now, you would ask, why I'm in the governor's race again? Well, look, I call it unfinished business. Yeah, I went into a Senate race. I went in too late. It's probably one thing that I wish I didn't do, because quite frankly, when you jump in a Senate race up against a guy who already has $20 million in the bank, and you only have about 6 months, very difficult to win that election. But I will also tell you this. In 6 months, I made that guy spend $33.5 million. I almost defeated him, only lost by 150,000 net votes, and we made him use every dollar he had. But it gave me the opportunity to get back in the game. In 2019, I started to fight again for Ohio. I started traveling Ohio, all the cities. New York Times said, Ohio is dying. It is dying. Ohio is a dying state, whether we like it or not. Economically, if you look at the statistics, we are dying. I can give you statistics after statistics, but let me just give you a couple. Today, we are #1 in drug overdose, with serious drug overdose, #1. Today, we are 50th in new jobs and new businesses. That's a problem. But here's the worst thing about today. Today, we are #1 in corruption. We are #1 in corruption. We have a very corrupt system, pay for play in Ohio. We were ranked #7 in 2019. We've now moved to #1 because we've had issues in Toledo. We've had, by the way, it's not just Republicans and Democrats, because we have a pay for play system. And we just had House Bill 6, which really, keep your eyes on this. We've already had a few people indicted. I believe it'll be even worse. There are people very close to this governor who are probably going to have some problems. One of them is a PUC chairman who, by the way, got a $4.2 million contract before he was hired by the governor, by First Energy, and now all of a sudden the FBI steps in. Let's not forget this. First Energy has pleaded guilty to bribery. They have pleaded guilty to bribery. We have a system that needs cleaned up, and that's what I want to do for you. I want to be the fighter that goes in and change some of these economic statistics, but let's also talk about the current government and what we have, especially when it comes to gun rights. Anybody that believes that he's going to protect your Second Amendment rights, you better start thinking twice. He already has. I said this, zebras don't change their colors, DeWines don't change their colors. I'm telling you, if you go back, what's that?
Some of us do.
Well, if you go back and you look at his voting record in the U.S. Senate, you will find that he was the worst of the worst. He was an F-rated under the NRA, and we all forgot about that. We all forgot about that. We all gave him a pass, except me. I will tell you that. I did not give him a pass, because in 2018, I realized he was not the the governor that we should be electing. And I'll be honest with you, I've said this publicly. I didn't vote for him and I didn't vote for Cordray. I left it blank because I didn't want to support somebody who was going to take us down the wrong path. And quite frankly, we've learned he's taken us down the wrong path. He wanted to be governor so bad that he would tell you anything, but just follow the path. I jumped into this race because, let's face it, we have Biden as president right now, whether we like it or not. If you give DeWine 4 more years, your gun rights are going to be just as bad as what Biden wants, because the only reason it's safe, stand your ground, he's signed. But you got to remember, he wasn't willing to sign stand your ground until he knew Renacci was coming. And then all of a sudden, he decided to sign stand your ground. He is going to continue to want to take our gun rights away because that's the type of person he is. I would ask you this. You can go to my records. You can see what I've done. You can see my history. JimRenacci.com. I have a plan for Ohio, which includes pro-freedom, pro-Second Amendment, pro-First Amendment, the elimination of critical race theory. We can do a lot of things. We have to eliminate the federal hold on our state. By the way, one last thing. All these guys that are running for Senate, God bless them. And anybody running for Congress, God bless them. They're going to get to Washington and find out they are wasting their time. Because what happens when you get to Washington is, it's such a bad place that you could say no, and you can fight, but you'll be one of 525. And the swamp is so muddy and so deep that after a while, just like me, after 6 years, I realized that the only place to fix our country and the only place to change things is to have governors who say no more. To have governors who say, I'm not going to take this. To have people like DeSantis who say, you know what, the schools, you're not going to give us CRT because I'm going to take your funding away from you. Somebody like DeSantis who says, I'm going to make sure I protect your gun rights. I'm going to make sure that you're not required to wear a mask. This is the kind of governor you need. I promise you this. Governor DeSantis is a personal friend of mine. So is Governor Noem, who also is another good governor. And we have a few good governors, but not many. I promise you this, if you elect me, I will be your Governor DeSantis in Ohio. With that, would you ask me any questions? Try to zip.
Two topics. School choice, unfunded mandates. I know a governor's not a legislature, but what's your plans?
Look, you're exactly right, and that's a great point. No governor has the authority to make some of the decisions Governor DeWine made, but I'm going to work with the legislature. Look, I'm not going to call them names. I'm not going to say they're bad people. Most of them are good people, want to get things done. The problem is today we have a governor who doesn't work with them. My answer to this is I want children to have their own choice. I want families to be able to choose where they want to send their child. I'm a big believer in, number one, we should come up with a dollar amount. We should come up with a dollar amount to make sure that we're paying enough for the child's education, and then we should let the family decide where they want to send the child and let that dollar amount follow them. That's one thing.
And the unfunded mandates?
Unfunded mandates. Well, first off, it depends on. I don't believe we got to get away from government. These unfunded mandates. The other thing, if you go to JimRenacci.com, you'll see that I want Ohio to break away from the federal grab they have on us. Right now, 1 out of every $4 that comes into the state treasury is from the federal government. Because we bring in federal dollars, we have to listen to their mandates, Common Core, all these things. I have a plan to eliminate all that. Now people say, oh, what are you going to do? That's 25% off the budget. Well, guess what? I have also a plan where we got to cut costs. Today, Ohio has an $80 billion budget with 10.7 million residents. Think about this. Florida has 22 million residents, twice as big, and spends $88 billion. Almost the same amount. Georgia and North Carolina have about the same population and spend $40 billion. There are things we need to change in Ohio. We got to look at everything from Medicaid expansion to our school funding to the overhead. I have a plan. I'm a business guy. I can make that happen if you elect me. Any other questions?
Yeah, during the COVID situation, we saw government pushing down on churches, telling people you couldn't go to church. What's your position?
Well, you know what? That's a great question for me, because I was just telling somebody, I haven't missed church my entire life. I'm a Catholic. a faithful Catholic, somebody who believes in the Catholic doctrines. I haven't missed church. No matter where I was at in the world, I found a church. And I used to say maybe 3 times in my entire life did I miss church until Governor DeWine took it away, the right for me to go to church. That should never happen. We have the First Amendment. We have the right to assembly. We have the right to our faith. And as governor, I'm never going to let that happen. By the way, I'm never going to let a medical director stand in front of me. I mean, think about that. Governor DeWine, by the way, he selected a medical director who wasn't even pro-life. That's not even a Republican value. And then he put her in front and said, you tell everybody how bad things are. And you know what else you do? You scare them, because that's what he did. He scared us all. She tried to scare us all. 10,000 cases with no background or experience to be able to make that happen. That medical director is not going to stand in front of me. That medical director will stand beside me. And that medical director is also not going to take our rights away. Think about this, the election too. They took our rights to election away from us. Not only going to church, he took our rights to election. These are things that we should never allow a governor to do. This governor should never get another chance. When I was running against him in 2017, you know what his favorite statement was? It's my turn. Well, guess what? You guys gave him his turn. Now it's time to eliminate his turn. Time to move on. Any other questions?
Forced vaccines.
Pretty simple to me. You should not be forced, and shouldn't be forced to get anything, whether it's a mask, whether it's a vaccine, any of this. You should not. Now, I will also say, if you want to wear a mask, you should be able to wear one, and nobody should condemn you for it. And if you want to get a vaccine, you should be able to get a vaccine, and nobody should condemn you for it. But if you don't want it, you shouldn't be forced to get it, and that's the way. And I'm hoping that the House and Senate can pass 238 and really make it, so that we don't have is forcing, especially with some of the, and let's face it, the governor always says, well, I signed this bill. He's always got a backstory. I'm telling you, he knows a bill doesn't go into effect with many of our schools. By the way, I will also tell you, because I was in a liberal event yesterday where the guy said to me, well, the school districts are now saying people can wear masks. You should be all for that, because you say the closer to the school district, the better. And I said, no, here's what I would tell you. It's the parent that makes the decision whether the child wears a mask or not. It's not the school district. And then he said to me, well, the school district is the parent. Guess what? The school district should be the parents, and we need to get the parents engaged, which I'm glad to see we're doing. But right now, the parents are the ones, there's nobody who's more concerned about their children than their parents, and that's who should make the decision.
Constitutional carriage.
Support it. Look, I mean, this stuff is pretty simple to me. You're looking at a guy, if you're just a one-issue guy on the Second Amendment, I'm your guy. I hope you're not just a one-issue person, because there's a lot more. But I will tell you this, I will defend your right to carry. I'm a big believer in it. I love hunting and fishing and all those things when I used to have time. I don't have time anymore, I will admit that. But I am not going to let your rights be taken, and constitutional carry will be something I would sign.
Sorry, I'm just... 4 questions. 4 questions. It really bothers me when I see the hundreds of thousands of illegals coming across the border, and then they want the taxpayers to pay for all this, give them everything in the world for free, tell us we got to get COVID shots, we got to wear the mask, and nobody's saying bleep about what they got to do, and yet they allow them in by the hundreds of thousands, busting them throughout the United States. As governor of Ohio, would you do like the governor of South Dakota and say, you're not coming here?
Absolutely. That's a pretty simple one. We got to take care of our own first. We have to take care of our own first. I don't know if anybody's paying attention. Last year, Governor DeWine came out and said that he supports bringing in many people from other countries. Remember who stood up for that? This was prior to COVID. There was somebody who stood up for it in the media. It was me. I said, we need to make sure that we are not bringing people in. I got Jane Timken to write a letter against me, if you pay attention. Because people say, where were you at back in 2019? Or where were you at? Hey, I've been fighting this governor since January of 2019. And in July of 2019, when I came out publicly against the governor for bringing in immigrants, I said, this is ridiculous. It shouldn't happen. Then all of a sudden I get the chairman of the Ohio Republican Party saying, we support the governor in his positions. Remember that. Remember that. That's a key issue. All these people running. Maybe.
Based on what you said earlier about gun rights, you support Ohio becoming a Second Amendment sanctuary state?
Absolutely. I've already said that too. I mean,
I thought you had, but I wanted to.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. By the way, I want Ohio to be a sanctuary state from the federal government. All right? So I'm gonna tell you that right now. That's why I'm telling you, we're gonna make these senators and these congressmen waste their time because we're not gonna deal with the federal government. We're going to have a plan that look, and you can't do it overnight, but I just told you, $1 out of $4 comes to the federal government. Whenever you're taking money, you gotta listen to them. We gotta stop that. We gotta eliminate the funding from the federal government. We gotta get our costs in line. We gotta quit spending $80 billion and start spending $40 billion. And then we gotta bring our taxes down, bring our spending down, and at the same time tell the federal government, hit the road. You have limited powers, not absolute powers, and we don't want you around.
Further funding fair housing. I stumbled over the words. You're familiar with it? Basically, you take federal money and they tell you where you have to, they make you change zoning laws.
Right, yeah,
because
not gonna-
you're taking the money.
I just told you, I want to get away from all that funding. Not going to be easy, not going to happen in the first 30 days. I'm going to work with the House and Senate. We're going to get rid of that money, and we're going to do what we need to do. And we're going to do it better because we're not going to have the mandates. I'll take one more question.
As a former businessman, what do you think about the federal eviction moratorium?
I think it's ridiculous, I'm telling you. Look, that's why I got out of Washington. When you got a mortgage, you got to pay the mortgage back. Now all of a sudden you can't evict somebody. You can't collect. By the way, when I lived in Washington, D.C., you couldn't evict people even if they didn't pay the rent. I was in an apartment complex. The woman next to me was a sitting U.S. Congresswoman, and they couldn't evict her, yet she was 1.5 years behind rent. This is the ridiculous stuff they're trying to push all around the country.
I have a friend that owns, since he's retired, his rental property is his primary source of income. Two houses he owns, 4 of them aren't making their rent payments right now. And he can't evict them. Yet, one of those houses, he had to go out and replace the hot water heater. He's not only not getting money from that property, he's having to put money in that property.
That's crazy. Well, I will end with this. In 2018, I lost an election in November, first time that I've lost anything. And I told you, the one regret, but I got 2 phone calls that night in November. One was from Ivanka Trump saying, thank you for what you did for my father. The second was from my mother. Now, my mother's 94 years old. She'll be 95 this year. And you know what she said to me? She said, Jimmy. Nobody calls me Jimmy, but she does. She says, Jimmy. She said, don't worry about the loss because God has other plans for you. There's something else He wants you to do in the future. Let me just explain. That's what I'm doing today. This is unfinished business. JimRenacci.com. Would appreciate your vote, would appreciate your support. I look forward to being your governor and coming back here in 2 years as your governor and talking to you and saying, here's what we're going to do together. Thank you very much.